sucks.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too bad. I mean, it should be okay. I'm not too worried about it, really. Don't worry about it. I'm not worried at all.
Coming of age is defined as reaching adulthood status, which is super vague, but in film, it's typically portrayed by a character's journey to find out who they are. Traditionally, in a good old coming of age film, the main character figures out their identity by being forced to step outside of their comfort zone. In the end, the protagonist finds the people they belong with, or at least they find themselves comfortable with who they are. This is the modern day coming of age film. On the other hand, there's another coming of age story that reflects the total opposite of that. Instead of dealing with identity issues, this coming of age story is about a character who just can't move on with their life. There's no big accomplishment to achieve in these stories. Their endings are not high-five pauses in the air. Instead, they're just bittersweet. The whole conflict the character feels is simple, and it's the inability to move on. Leaving the past sucks, especially when nostalgia kicks in. The people you were close with drift away, a relationship ends, or you just get older and things aren't the same anymore. Depressing, right? I know, how fun. Luckily, this feeling has been captured in film, and in 3 movies I particularly like that I chose here. I feel like they can hopefully help us better understand how we can
stop being a bitch and come on.
I'll be focusing on 3 movies in particular here, and one isn't even a coming of age film, but I'll explain later why I chose it. The movies are Superbad, Shithouse, and Swingers. Each of these are different stories. They all take place during different parts of adulthood, and each deal with a different kind of moving on. So let's start at the earliest, as a teenager.
Fucking calm down, Greg. It's soccer. It's soccer.
Fuck you, man.
Now, starting with the youngest amongst the protagonists, we're starting with Superbad. I know that almost everyone has seen it, so without boring you with the details, it's about 2 high school seniors, Seth and Evan, who are trying to get with girls that they like at the end of their final year in school. The film takes place just over 2 days, and while the goals of Seth and Evan are previously stated, the movie really focuses on the state of their friendship. Seth and Evan have been friends for a while now, but with them going to 2 separate colleges, they know that growing apart is inevitable. Now, it's clear that they've been drifting apart for a while, but going away to college sets in this realization that it won't be the same as before. I think we've all experienced a dying friendship at one point or another, and in Superbad they highlight so well how hard that process is. Like, the entire transition into a new life stage without the same support you once had is incredibly scary. Throughout the movie, the characters put on this whole facade that all they care about is getting laid, when in reality, they're avoiding coming to terms with what's happening to them. Evan even admits this. He tells Seth that the reason he's rooming with one of their mutual friends is not because he wants to replace Seth, but because he knows he needs some sort of safety net, especially in this next year. And them pursuing these girls play a much bigger role when you think about how it's helping explain these characters. For example, Seth's character suffers from a lack of self-esteem, and Jules is his way out of it for him. And as for Evan, he has a legitimate crush on Becca, but he goes about it in a way that is so not him. Like, his actions seem to be him overcompensating for his fear of getting rejected. These pursuits are great vehicles for portraying who these characters are at their core, and it really helps explain why exactly they have such a tough time moving on. Seth can't move on because he genuinely feels like he can't be accepted by others, as proof in how little friends he has at school. And Evan is more popular, but still isn't confident enough to go out on his own without support that he's gotten from Seth. I love that this movie portrays these characters in such an honest way that I'm sure most of us could see ourselves in Seth and Evan. In the end, the 2 drunkenly admit what's been going on between them, and while they don't really discuss it sober the next day, they almost come to terms with it by acknowledging it and not really saying much about it. They know it sucks, but it's inevitable. I'd really love to see a sequel of this movie, honestly. That sounds problematic, but if they did it in a way where the characters came back, maybe to their hometown for Christmas or something, and you get to see them interact again, I think it could be pretty interesting. So, cheers to this bro comedy for getting me in the feels.
Wait, are you about to smoke a cigarette?
Can you not be a bitch?
Next is Shithouse. This is obviously a less popular movie, but still a coming-of-age movie with a similar theme. It came out in 2020 and was written and directed by Cooper Raiff, who also stars in it. I think the budget was like $15,000, which is amazing. And I found out recently that me and Cooper Raiff are the same age, so that makes me feel pretty good about my life. Anyways, the story of this movie revolves around the character Alex, a 19-year-old who is 6 months in of his freshman year at a college in California. Alex is originally from Texas, so he's super homesick and doesn't really have any close friends. Throughout the movie, he develops a romantic relationship with his RA of all people, and like Superbad, the movie takes place between the span of a few days. Something that I really appreciate in this movie is how down-to-earth the dialogue and setting are for this film. Like, the biggest set piece in this movie is a house party that is pretty tame in comparison to what comes to mind when you think college house party. Alex's character deals with a different type of struggle of moving on. While Seth and Evan were scared to take the next step into adulthood, Alex here is in the midst of it already. He usually spends his time alone, and while he takes chances to be social, the encounters usually end with him calling his mom and sister back home. This is that sort of middle ground of this transition that we've all felt at one point or another, especially if you went to college. These social events seem to be draining to Alex, and he's frustrated he hasn't found his people yet. And Alex is still holding on fully committing to college too. This is something he even admits himself. He gets his meals and takes them back to his dorm and actively sabotages his own schoolwork. And any new person he meets, he immediately has a negative view towards them. So he hooks up with his RA Maggie, then has a night out with her, and Maggie becomes the first person that he's opened up to in 6 months. Unfortunately, Maggie has some form of trust issues, so she distances herself from Alex the next day, leaving Alex alone after feeling like he's finally found someone. Eventually, Alex comes to grips with where he's at throughout the course of the film, to where it culminates in him finally breaking down to tell his mom and sister how he's been feeling. They have no idea, of course, since the whole time he was feeding them a fake narrative about how well he's doing, even going so far as to make up friends so it seems like he's doing better than he is. The feeling of being out of place in this in-between area of two lifestyles absolutely sucks. You don't want to do anything, so you get sad and lonely. And you're sad and lonely, so you don't want to do anything. It's a rough cycle that is presented so well here in Shithouse. While I was watching it, I related to Alex in more than a few ways. I mean, besides getting locked out of your dorm when you just took a shower, but also that he longed for things to be like how they were. He wants things to go back to normal. He wants to be in his old home with his own family and do what he always did. Unfortunately, as we all know, it doesn't work that way. Life moves on without your input. That's the story of Shithouse, the challenge of being able to navigate daily life when you're dealing with extreme change. I love that this movie was so honest and also randomly hilarious at times. Like mid-argument between Alex and Maggie, they start including the movie 13 Going on 30 in their argument, which is just amazing.
I am. I've been. You're like the girl from 13 Going on 30.
What, Jennifer Garner?
Totally recommend this movie, especially if you're in the first few years of college and you're going through a time of change.
Why is Gretzky on his ass again?
Gretzky's a little bitch.
Okay, now this is an odd one to throw into the mix, but here's Swingers, a 1996 comedy. It's similar to Shithouse in how it came to be. It's written by and stars Jon Favreau, who spent a few years just shopping the script around with no luck until it finally got made. Its plot is about a 20-something struggling comedian who is still trying to get over a breakup 6 months after. He and his friends struggle to find any real acting work and spend their time going out and hitting on girls at bars and fancy LA house parties that they crash. Now, this is no way a coming-of-age movie. Jon Favreau has already come to age. I think he's like in his late 20s in this. But to me, I think it does represent the same nature that coming-of-age movies usually embody. The story about a naive person coming to terms with life as it is now, and braving whatever comes next. That's the story of Swingers. Jon Favreau's character, Mike, is in this rut where he's totally depressed. All he does is think about his ex-girlfriend, even 6 months after his breakup. I mean, he and Vince Vaughn's characters pick up girls in Vegas, and all he can think about is if she called. He's still very affected, to say the least. Throughout the movie, you can see him struggle with the depths of this and just going through the trials of a post-breakup life. He doesn't want to talk to any girls because he's too busy reminiscing on his ex. Achievements for him is when he doesn't mention her for a single day.
You notice I didn't mention her once today.
And as he goes through this low he's feeling, he slowly works his confidence back up. One night, he talks to a girl at a bar, and although it goes sour after an absolutely great scene, where he tries to leave a voicemail but ends up leaving like 10 in a row, he's still able to chip away, even if super slowly. The movie wraps up so well too. Like, you can see Mike's character come to a sense of peace after everything that's happened. Without spoiling anything, he finally proves to himself that he's moved on. Plus, there's a fantastic closing scene with Mike and Vince Vaughn's character Trent. Honestly, I just want to talk about this scene too, because it's great. So Trent, a total womanizer throughout the film, sees a girl across the diner who he thinks is flirting with him. He goes into this whole performance in front of Mike where he's sure that he's being flirted with, but eventually it's found out that the woman is playing with her baby, not looking their way at all. Trent is rightfully embarrassed, and the movie ends with Mike just smiling. I love this. In context of the film, I think it represented that sometimes your friends don't know what the hell they're talking about. Trent has been given advice to Mike the whole movie about how to woo a woman, but in the end, he's just an idiot. But yeah, Swingers. Great movie, 1,000,000 stars. Check it out. The reason I made this video is the concept itself is one of the hardest things to capture in any medium, especially film. I mean, it's not a typical hero's journey. There's no call for adventure. The character is just thrown into it. But yeah, I totally recommend watching these movies. They're definitely worth your time, and each is super funny too. I want to say thanks for watching my video all the way through. I randomly got like 70 views on my last video, and I have 30 subscribers. So I don't know how that's possible, but super cool. But yeah, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
You